You've built a life that looks incredibly successful from the outside. Your business is growing, your calendar is full, people respect you, and you continue to earn more and more money. But internally, you can't shut your brain off. You wake up already thinking. You're exhausted, yet can't fall asleep. And if you do fall asleep, you wake up still feeling exhausted, mentally wired, always on. And you tell yourself you're going to slow down, be more present, take better care of yourself. And then somehow you end up right back in that same cycle. More pressure, more urgency, more responsibility, more overthinking. And maybe the part that confuses you the most is this. You know better. You're intelligent, you're aware, you're disciplined. You've read the books, you've hired coaches, you've built the businesses. You know that what you're currently feeling and how you're currently behaving isn't right, isn't sustainable. But you can't seem to change or do anything about it. You constantly feel this confusion. Why does it feel so hard to slow down, feel calm, be present, confident, clear, at peace? Though you desperately want to, it's almost as if there's this invisible resistance that is holding you back from doing what you logically know you need and should be doing. And it brings up these pondering thoughts. When we dig a level deeper in those moments of silence, I imagine you begin to think, why do I continue to attach my self-worth to my results? Why does slowing down make me feel so anxious? Why do I keep chasing that next achievement, that next zero, hoping that when I achieve that milestone, then I'll finally be able to slow down and take care of myself? The reason you're stuck with these feelings, these thoughts, this rumination has absolutely nothing to do with your business tactics and strategies. The problem you're facing is that your nervous system and subconscious mind have learned to associate stress, pressure, hypervigilance, and constant achievement with safety, control, and survival. And until that changes, you will continue to intellectually know what to do while emotionally and subconsciously feeling unable to do it. And that's exactly why, as a high-performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach, I use hypnosis with CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and high performers to help them unlearn the destructive patterns of believing, feeling, and behaving that keep them stuck on a path of inevitable burnout and emotional implosion. And that is what we're talking about today. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck High Performer podcast. This is the show for the high performer who knows they're capable of more, but feels stuck, underperforming relative to their potential. My name is Paul Salter. I'm a high-performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach for CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and ambitious professionals who are tired of getting in their own way and are ready to get unstuck so they can lock in and level up. And the core theme of today's conversation, the key message I really want you to walk away with, is simply this. There are a collection of beliefs, emotions, and behaviors that have influenced your current level of success. They're responsible for driving the ship to where it is today. Yet inevitably, those same beliefs, emotions, and behaviors will become responsible for holding you back from either sustaining this level of success or ascending to the next one. Now, fortunately, these beliefs, these emotions, these behaviors we speak of that are quietly sabotaging you, they're all learned, which means they can be unlearned. Yet the challenge that you and myself face when it comes to unlearning the beliefs, the emotions, and the behaviors that are no longer serving us is that this type of work, it's deep, identity level work that's confronting and uncomfortable at times. But by the end of this conversation, I want you to understand not only where and how you're getting in your own way, why you are stuck. I also want you to understand why and how so many successful, high-performing individuals like you are using the power of high-performance hypnosis to release what is no longer serving them so they can continue to be the best version of themselves. And to begin this conversation, we need to address some of the key reasons you are stuck. Because again, there's a collection of beliefs, emotions, and behaviors that are collectively influencing your current level of success. Again, externally might look incredible. But I have an imagination you're listening to this podcast. You're listening to this particular episode because internally you're struggling. There's chaos, there's anxiety, there's indecision, there's pressure, burnout, overwhelm. And you know your current path is unsustainable. So again, the first primary reason you're stuck is that the patterns that have helped you become and achieve this level of success are now the patterns preventing peace, fulfillment, and your next level. You've built your success on patterns born out of survival. To achieve the success you have today, well, first and foremost, you had to become hyper independent. You had to learn what it was like to put in the work, develop the skill set, develop the tenacity and the resilience to achieve. And you quickly began to learn that achievement earns you approval. And as you continue to learn that achievement led to approval, you also began to learn that productivity led to achievement. So therefore, productivity, always doing, being busy, that is safe. The whole experience of always doing, always being on and available for your clients and your team, you formed a belief that if you can continue to be that productive, continue to grind, you will achieve, and that achievement will lead to approval and recognition. So as a result of leaning more into the doing, you leaned further and further away from the being. You learned that slowing down to be, to feel your emotions, slowed down productivity, which took away achievement and approval and being seen. So you learned how to avoid, how to numb, repress, and cope your emotions. And underneath it all, as you continue to do this and you got more eyeballs, more validation and attention, you learned that you had to constantly prove yourself. But here's where society has misled you. And I'll say this periodically throughout this conversation, you're not broken. You develop these patterns to meet your core human needs of acceptance, belonging, connection, security, safety, and love. But as I just described these patterns and behaviors that you learned through experience, here's what's happening in the professional realm. Anxiety is part of the preparation problem. Overthinking is seen as incredibly responsible. Hypervigilance becomes leadership. Emotional suppression is a badge of honor, a sign of professionalism. Workaholism becomes ambition, which is respected and admired by so many, especially in the hustle culture we live in today. And this collectively is why you get stuck. You're wired to seek reward. When you get that experience of reward, dopamine's released. So again, all of these patterns that are operating beneath the surface continue to be operated upon to get you that reward, to get you that validation, that sense of achievement, pride, seen, accomplished. Yet inevitably, they become your downfall. Again, what got you here will not get you to where you want to go. Your next evolution will require you unlearn some of these beliefs, emotions, and behaviors that got you to where you are today. And I want to tell you a quick example. A client of mine spent 20 years in the military, and when she came out of the military, you can imagine she came out with so many invaluable intangibles around work ethic, discipline, leadership, selflessness. And after a successful 20-year career in the military, she was ready to make a mark on her life and her community on her own. And what that next post-military life chapter looked like was twofold. Number one, she took over a leadership position and was a core component in a company while also beginning to take her side hustle to the next level. Well, what I learned in our early work together was that for the 6 years she had been out of the military, she had not taken a single day off. There wasn't a single day where at least once she hadn't opened email, checked Slack, or responded to a few messages. Well, what was interesting was for the first time ever, she had the opportunity to take her husband and her children on a 3-week vacation to Europe. A trip that, on one hand, she was incredibly excited for. The chance to show her children the beautiful country of Italy, to show her husband, because she was stationed there. She knew Italy very well. Yet on the other hand, she was incredibly anxious because she told me she didn't know who she was if she wasn't producing, leading, or putting out fires. Her nervous system had learned that her productivity determined her self-worth. When she was in motion, that was safe. Slowing down was unsafe. Slowing down was danger, a sign of laziness, a loss of control. Can you relate? Because her issue wasn't time management. Her issue was her identity. It was not safe to slow down. It was not safe to take time off. Time away from work bred feelings of guilt, regret, and anxiety. Yet through our work together, leading up to this trip, we were able to foster and create a sense of safety slowing down. Logically, she knew the physical, mental, and emotional well-being benefits of time off and slowing down, how precious this opportunity was to spend significant time with her husband and her children while away. And we were able to create a sense of safety, unlearn and detach her self-worth from her productivity and results. And I was able to challenge her. I'm not asking you to take all 3 weeks off from work, but I want you to take at least 48 hours off the final 2 days of the trip and at least 72 hours off once you arrive in Italy. The result? She texted me on day 6 saying it was the first time she had opened her laptop or her phone for anything work-related. She went 5 full days and felt like a new woman. And as she returns from this trip, what we plan to do is come down to a weekly day off. We'll start small. 1 day of the week, no work-related activities to reset, recharge mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And that's because she had to learn that it's safe to do so. And that was where our focus was. And I imagine as I have that next coaching call and conversation with her, I'm going to feel the energy of a new woman who is recharged at a level she has never been recharged before. But we come back to what was familiar for her and what's likely familiar for you. Remember, your subconscious craves familiarity because familiarity embodies comfortability and predictability. And your subconscious has one goal, to keep you safe, to keep you alive. And if your environment, externally and internally, are familiar, comfortable, and predictable, well, it's easy to feel a sense of safety, and there's a deep knowing you're going to survive. The challenge we all face, though, is that oftentimes our subconscious finds safety and familiarity in patterns of anxiety, stress, exhaustion, and overwhelm. You stay overwhelmed and exhausted because it feels normal. Overworking feels normal. Rest, slowing down feels foreign, feels like a threat. It feels like danger. So we continue to avoid doing what we know we need to be doing to foster our well-being and significant sustainable success because subconsciously within our nervous system, it doesn't feel safe. And if I go one step further that I really imagine will strike a chord with you, you think you're addicted to winning, producing. But what you're actually addicted to is stress. You don't feel safe in stillness. You don't feel comfortable without urgency. You unconsciously create pressure, fires, and problems just so you can solve them. You equate stress and your problem-solving ability with your self-worth and importance. You don't know how to function without stress hormones in your system. You always need another goal. There's an inability to rest without guilt. You check your phone constantly. And even when you achieve one milestone or success metric after the next, you have no idea how to enjoy it. Not presently, not effectively. It's almost like you become emotionally indifferent, emotionally flat. I'm hopeful what I'm sharing with you is resonating. And I want to share one more key reason you're stuck that might surprise you. And then we'll shift our conversation into why and how hypnosis is the fastest, most effective way to get you unstuck, to unlearn the beliefs, emotions, and behaviors that are keeping you stuck. Believe it or not, some of the most successful clients I've worked with, like success as viewed on paper, are afraid of success. Most people think the primary fear that keeps people stuck is fear of failure. And that's because very few people understand fear of success. Success can subconsciously mean more visibility, more expectations, more pressure, more judgment, responsibility, potential abandonment, loss of relationships, greater emotional exposure. So what happens when this fear of success takes over, you unconsciously begin to develop patterns of delaying, hesitating, indecision, procrastination, self-sabotage. You shrink yourself, you dim your light, you begin to play small or overcomplicate the action steps, waiting for the perfect alignment of things to come together before you take action. And what often happens here is you may desperately say you want next level success, scaling your business from 7 to 8 figures, hiring a team, or doubling the number of locations you have. But there's also another part of you that is absolutely terrified of what comes with that success. And there's a client of mine that stands out that really embodies this. He was the president of a very successful marketing agency, incredibly well known. And he had been there for a while. He had taken the revenue and increased it exponentially during his time there in that leadership role. But he was getting burnt out. He was beginning to feel unfulfilled. He lost connection with his purpose, his why. He felt like he had achieved everything he wanted to achieve in that role. It was growing stale. It was growing monotonous. He was looking for change. He was looking for something new. And he initially communicated that he lacked clarity on what that next step would be, what he wanted to do. And as we began our work together and we started diffusing and removing some of that anxiety and fear that was disguised or really hiding, that lack of knowing that next step, it became evident that he was courageously and honestly able to admit he wanted to go start his own agency. Yet, as we shined more light on this goal of wanting to start his own agency, a myriad of excuses appeared. And for a short period of time, he remained stuck in analysis paralysis. He knew what to do. He had run a successful agency. He knew what to do to go start another one. He had the people, he had the systems, he had the ideas. But there were some major fears holding him back. He didn't want to be the face of the agency. He didn't like the attention. He didn't like the pressure that came with the spotlight, being in front of others. In fact, there were countless speaking opportunities during his time as president in that particular company that he turned down. He said no to. And it wasn't noble from a time management perspective. It was due to fear. He didn't like that pressure, that spotlight. It didn't feel safe standing out, being the face, the one responsible, literally in this new endeavor, having to run and execute payroll successfully, being responsible for the ability of his team to pay their bills. He didn't want the notoriety and the recognition that came with taking his own agency from ground zero up to millions and millions of dollars and tons of high-paying, well-known clients. And as we dug into that more, that fear of standing out, well, through hypnosis, we were able to uncover there were many moments in his life, particularly in his childhood years, where a class presentation, a speaking opportunity did not go well. He stumbled over his words. He forgot his lines. He was too anxious and he went quiet, numb, unable to even begin the presentation. And as we went even deeper, there was always this pressure to be perfect, this pressure to get the A+. And this pressure led to massive performance anxiety. And those accompanying failures I just highlighted led to this deep belief it's not safe to be up in front of other people. It's not safe to stand out, to have all eyeballs, attention, the spotlight on him. And through our work together, well, a few incredible things happened. Number one, he did leave that agency and go start his own. Number two, he advocated to take some of his current people, to build his team, to take some of those clients in a very amicable exchange of clients. He began to accept speaking opportunities. He began to put himself out there. And as we fast forward almost a year later, that new company is thriving. He's accepting speaking opportunities. He is the face of that new agency. He is the one leading the contract negotiations and helping form the partnerships with his team's dream clients. Because we create a sense of safety in leadership and standing out and having the eyes, the attention, the more responsibility and expectations on him. And these were all things he knew he could do and he needed to do, yet subconsciously it didn't feel safe. There was an incongruency present. And at this point, it should be clear that most high performers, don't feel stuck because of a lack of information, a lack of a strategy problem. You feel stuck because of a subconscious safety problem. You know what to do. You have the information. You've hired the business and the strategy coaches and consultants. You've read the books. Yet it's like when the pressure rises or stakes increase, visibility grows or success expands, your nervous system and subconscious identity pull you back to what feels familiar and safe. So that's why I use hypnosis. Not because my clients are weak, broken, irrational, or damaged, but because their subconscious mind is doing exactly what it was designed to do, to protect them, to keep them safe. Here's how I want you to think about hypnosis. We're going to dig in and talk about the who, what, why, how, science, what it's not. You're trying to create more success, peace, and fulfillment. Yet you're also unconsciously running outdated internal software programs. Your subconscious is the program running on autopilot in the background. And that programming sounds and feels like, I have to prove myself. Rest is lazy. I feel guilty when I take time off. I feel guilty slowing down. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. My worth, it comes from achievement. If I don't hit this metric or if I come up short here, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. And the hard part for many people to digest is that these patterns, these programs are primarily responsible for this level of success that you're currently at. They made you disciplined, driven, relentless, productive, tenacious. Eventually, however, these same patterns will begin to slowly but surely erode your peace, your self-care, your well-being. And now they begin to show up as anxiety, burnout, overthinking, emotional exhaustion, and the inability to ever shut your brain off. It's like trying to operate a modern business using outdated software. It's literally that simple. Eventually, the system slows down, glitches appear, performance suffers, and the entire operating system becomes overwhelmed. The problem isn't that you're broken, it's that your subconscious mind is still running old protective programs that no longer match the life that you're trying to create. Hypnosis helps update the operating system. And I have such relatability here in that, I just bought a new Mac. And it turns out, unbeknownst to me, my previous Mac, I thought was a couple years old. It was actually 6 years old. And it was incredibly, painfully slow. And that's because the operating system was 6 years old. As soon as I got this new one, I am moving at lightning speed, 1,000,000 miles an hour faster. It's more efficient, more effective. I feel lighter, more at ease, more productive, because I literally updated the operating system. And that's how I want you to think about hypnosis. You have these programs, in this case, these patterns of believing, feeling, thinking, doing, and behaving that once served you, but they're no longer aligned with what is needed for you to ascend to this next level of success and become that next best version of you. Let's talk for a moment what hypnosis is not, and then we'll dig into what it is and the science behind it. I always have to address this. You hear hypnosis, I imagine you might think of me dangling a pocket watch, getting you to cluck like a chicken, and you might quickly connect the dots to what you've seen on cruise ships, comedy shows, stage shows. All of that is technically hypnosis. It's unlike anything I do or use with my clients. Listen, hypnosis is a natural state of mind. It's a natural state of focused attention where your analytical mind quiets down enough to access the deeper subconscious patterns that exist. When you're in hypnosis, you're awake, alert, conscious, and in control. It's a natural state of mind that you've already been in multiple times per day. It's that same state you experience those first few moments when you transition from sleeping to waking, when you get lost or caught up in a good book, podcast, or your favorite TV show, or when you find that flow state while deeply immersed in a project at work or on the golf course. It's a natural state of mind. It's deep relaxation. In fact, a lot of my clients describe it as meditation on steroids. Now, what makes hypnosis so powerful and effective is it gives us an opportunity to quiet your conscious mind and connect directly with your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind influences 95% of what you do on a daily basis. Your subconscious mind is home to all of your memories, your emotions, your beliefs, and your habits. Your subconscious mind wants to keep you safe. Anytime there is an external trigger that may threaten that safety, your subconscious deploys a pattern, deploys a program, what I refer to as a destructive mindset program. And with that deployment comes an emotion, maybe anxiety, an accompanying belief, ways of speaking to and about yourself, ways of thinking, and ways of behaving. And all of this is designed to keep you stuck in that environment of familiarity, comfortability, and predictability because that is safe. Well, what's fascinating, and it's what I mentioned earlier, is that these programs are all learned, which means they can be unlearned. We go back to the client I mentioned who was fearful of having that next level of success because he was fearful of standing out. He had those moments in his younger years where he felt humiliated and embarrassed. In those moments, he was forced to stand out. So he developed these fears, these beliefs, this nervous system, literal, visceral feeling. It's not safe to do that. It's not safe to stand out, which then further bred, I'm not a good public speaker. I can't be the lead of a company. I can't speak. I can't stand out. Do you see how this is all interconnected here? Well, the beautiful thing is that our memories are malleable. And one easy way to think of a memory is to think of a memory as a Microsoft Word document. And through hypnosis, we can access some of these core memories, which, let me be very clear, logically, you might not know right here in the present moment which memories created some of these destructive mindset programs and limiting beliefs. You may, but more often than not, you don't. But we come back to that Microsoft Word document. If a memory is like a Microsoft Word document, in hypnosis, we can open that file. We can do some editing, remove some emotional, create some new reframing and different context and perspective based on all the life experience you've learned and had since. And then we can put that memory back, void of that emotion with a new perspective. And that has a positive ripple effect into your present day way of believing, feeling, and behaving. Now, I always like to share research to just further show you the efficacy of hypnosis. There was a really cool study published about 50 years ago. It was a big research review, a meta-analysis on the available literature comparing and contrasting the impact of traditional therapy on clients versus the impact of hypnotherapy on clients. And what this big research review found was that on average, somebody engaging in traditional therapy had what they called positive impact rate of 38%. So what they're saying is, people who participated in traditional therapy, overall their experience was like 38% positive. Here's the kicker. They experienced this 38% positive impact after an average of 600 therapy sessions. That is weekly therapy for more than 10 years for pretty shitty results, if you ask me. Whereas those in the hypnotherapy group experience an average positive impact of 93% after an average of 6 sessions. So I share that just to contrast the speed and the effectiveness. And the reason is simply put as this. I'm a big fan of traditional therapy. I think it has a time and a place. I think it's a valuable tool. But the big difference here is when you're engaging in dialogue in traditional therapy, all of this is taking place at the conscious level. And you're really just continuing to grease the groove of the same neural pathways that are responsible for the negative emotions and negative circumstances you're experiencing. Whereas hypnotherapy, we bypass all of that conscious level nonsense and we get to the core, the root, the subconscious identity-laden issue of what's actually going on. We don't continue to try to treat a bullet wound with a Band-Aid. We get right to the core, we remove the bullet and stitch it up so that it truly heals once and for all. Now, I have an imagination. You may be wondering, can I be hypnotized? Yes. Again, as I shared, hypnosis is a natural state of mind. It's really just a word to describe the type of brainwave you're producing at any given moment. You've already been in that hypnotic state multiple times today. And If you're listening to this episode, I imagine you're highly focused, imaginative, aware, mentally disciplined, and you already practice some variation of mental rehearsal on a regular basis. Well, the same mind that rehearses stress, pressure, worst case scenarios can also be trained differently. The problem that you are likely facing is you're already hypnotizing yourself daily. You're just conditioning anxiety, urgency, fear, and pressure instead of calm, confidence, and clarity. And I have found through thousands of sessions, hypnosis works really, really well for driven, ambitious, high performing individuals like you and like myself. And that's because your subconscious mind is shaped by repetition, emotional intensity, imagination, meaning, and experiences, not logic alone. This is why knowing what to do often changes nothing. You can consciously know something while subconsciously feeling the opposite. And again, the common examples we've already hashed out. You know resting is important, but you feel guilty slowing down. You know your worth is not tied to results, but emotionally you feel and believe it is. You know failure isn't fatal, but you feel it really is. Hypnosis helps create the congruency between knowing, feeling, being, embodying. Hypnosis creates the safety to do different so that you can feel different, achieve different, and be different. And I want to share a couple relatable examples with you. One of my clients he's a serial entrepreneur and he's a CEO of a legal software business. And I worked with him because he came to me struggling with an inability to delegate. He was often feeling indecisive and hesitant around delegating. And he thought he didn't have the right systems in place. He thought he didn't have the right people on the bus, and let alone the right people on the bus and in the right seats. But what we were actually able to uncover was a massive lack in trust in other people. And you can imagine if you don't trust other people, you are going to have a very challenging time delegating to those people. And through our work together, we were able to uncover just how much of a perfectionistic, high pressure environment he was raised in, specifically from his dad. He had to come home with straight A's, the awards, etc. And there were a couple pivotal moments in his life when faced with group projects, and I'm talking in elementary school, in which it was time for him and his group to work on the project, and nobody took the project as seriously as he did. They were ready to goof off and half-ass the project. And that didn't vibe for my client. That was so foreign to what he had been taught, how he had been raised. And he found himself in a pattern from elementary school all the way up until college. Anytime he was faced to work in a group dynamic, he would just do all of the work. He would do the whole project himself because he knew he could control the outcome if he did all of it himself. And for a period of time, that served him. He brought home good grades. He got dad's approval. But when he was trying to scale his business, well, it proved quite challenging trying to take on all the work himself, constantly cycling through one new hire after the next because he lacked trust in other people. And through our work together, we were able to reestablish a sense of safety. We were able to establish a sense of trust, which created more peace, more clarity, more decisiveness, and inevitably more success, more impact, more effectiveness in serving his clients and leading his team. The next client that comes to mind, I worked with the director of operations of 2 major car dealerships who struggled with significant anxiety. Massive panic attacks the last couple of months prior to our work together. And he thought that he just really couldn't handle this pressure. This was a fairly new role. He was responsible for 86 mouths to feed. He thought he wasn't cut out for this type of leadership position. And what we ultimately were able to see was, some of the challenges that manifested of this anxiety, this imposter syndrome, not feeling he was worthy and good enough, were not only intense anxiety, but he was short. He was quick to anger. He was snapping at his wife. He was continuing to neglect his self-care. And what we actually revealed was that behind the driver was that he felt he had better answers, better clarity, and was actually the person to lead the entire company, not just these two divisions. And he was afraid that if he poured himself into this opportunity and really gave 110%, that he would ruffle feathers with his superior, and maybe ultimately that would cost him his job and all that he had built to this point. So what we did was really focus on creating safety in being himself. It's safe to speak up. It's safe to go all in after your goals. And as we did this, it became more clear to not only see, but it became safe to feel the importance of taking care of himself, the importance of slowing down, the importance of systems and executing throughout the day, time for self-care, time to connect with the team, and leadership and mentorship opportunities frequently throughout the day. As a result, he's now crushing his self-care routine. His marriage is more communicative and connected than ever before. He's working more closely with his superior to share his ideas and shape the vision of the company and the structure. He's had to make some tough hiring and firing decisions, but now the culture of his sales teams is stronger than it's ever been. There's more connection, there's more trust, there's more clarity, there's more peace, and as a result, stronger performance and growth. And the last one I'll share with you is a client of mine is the vice president of a massive insurance company. And in taking on this new position, although logically he wanted it, it's great for the resume, he feels he earned it, he completely lacked the confidence that he could perform, because now he'd be the lead negotiator in closing big deals, bringing on those big clients. And he did not believe in himself that he had the ability to do it. Although on paper, he'd been with the company for a while, all of his experience to date had shaped and prepared him for this moment. He lacked the confidence, didn't feel he was worthy and capable of succeeding and executing all of the responsibilities in this new role. Well, what's really interesting is my client had inconsistent and unstable confidence from the get-go. He was the person who graduated first in his high school class of about 500 people, straight A's, the incredible high GPA, taking the AP courses. And in his words, and this was something that was reinforced to him time and time again, he was incredibly uncoordinated, incredibly unathletic. He constantly got teased and bullied for being unathletic. And he loved sports, but there was just this disconnect, this inability to perform. His parents, to this day, still make fun of him for not knowing or being able to skip in elementary school. His parents also never showed up to his sporting events, continuously reinforcing he's not athletic, he's not worthy, he's not capable. And where this took a sharper turn was in college. After being the number one student in his high school, he struggled mightily. For the first time, he failed. He came up short. He got critical feedback. What he did, the work he produced wasn't good enough. And this just continued to reinforce the lack of confidence, the I'm not good enough, I'm not capable story that was already running in the background. And for a while, it fueled his success. He had a terrific work ethic. He was grinding well throughout his 30s, his 40s, his 50s. But now here, it was truly holding him back. He was neglecting self-care. He was lacking belief, and he was fumbling over words, ineffectively communicating, unclearly articulating as he was trying to negotiate these deals. And he reached out to me on the brink of possibly losing a client that was responsible for a large portion of his firm's financial success. And fortunately, not only was that contract and deal salvaged, but through our work together, he began leading with confidence, walking with a new pep in his step, a swagger, a belief in himself, knowing he was worthy, deserving, and capable. He was the man for that job. This translated to more peace, a sense of safety taking time off, having hard conversations, trusting his gut, communicating his thoughts and opinions. And I want that for you too. I want that understanding, that knowing, because your behaviors always make sense once you understand what your subconscious mind is trying to protect you from. And maybe you feel stuck here today. And maybe the reason you feel stuck isn't because you're lazy, incapable, or missing another strategy. Maybe the version of you that created your current success simply doesn't feel safe operating at the next level. And while those patterns may have helped you get to where you are today, they were never designed to create peace, fulfillment, emotional freedom, or sustainable next level success. You don't need to become a different person. You need to stop operating from outdated subconscious patterns that no longer serve the life you're trying to create. Because the truth is this: real success is not building a business while destroying your nervous system. Real success is being able to perform at a high level without constantly feeling anxious, overwhelmed, emotionally exhausted, or internally at war with yourself. If today's episode resonated deeply with you, if you found yourself thinking, holy shit, that's me, then there's a good chance these are the exact patterns that need to be addressed. And this is the exact type of work that I do with my one-on-one coaching clients, helping them uncover and unlearn the destructive patterns of believing, feeling, and behaving that are keeping them stuck. And if you're ready to take action to get unstuck and out of your own way, you can use the link below in the show notes to apply for one-on-one private coaching. And whether we work together or not, I hope this episode gave you something incredibly important. The understanding that your patterns are not random and you are not broken. Just like you learned these current ways of believing, feeling, and behaving, you can unlearn them too. I thank you so much for listening to today's episode. My simple ask is this: if this episode resonated with you, share it in your inner circle. Share this episode with a high-performing friend or colleague who you know is quietly struggling. And if this episode resonated with you, I challenge you to take that seriously. It usually means that part of you knows it's time for change. And if you're ready to break free from what's been holding you back, ready to unlearn and let go of what's no longer serving you, then it's time to take action. And I invite you to use the link in the show notes below to apply for one-on-one private coaching. Thank you again for listening. Make today great, and I'll catch you in the next episode.